Hello and welcome to the Empower Hour. Happy Sunday, everyone. This is our weekly broadcast we do to help people who have left the Jehovah's Witness organization to get in stride with their lives. We know it's very difficult to find your way after leaving a religion that defined every single aspect of your life. And that's what we're here to do to help you to find your way. Today, we're going to be talking about finding your identity after leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses. If you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button right there. If you're watching on the Facebook group, welcome. We love our live listeners. Make sure to share this. If you're watching on YouTube, share this with your friends, share this with your family, with the people that have left the religion, because this is the information people really need. They need to know how to move forward. Sometimes on YouTube and other social media sites, it's the videos that are really sensationalized, that really trigger you, that get the most views, but they need tools like this. So make sure that you share this video with them. So, why is it so difficult to find your identity after leaving? Why is it so hard? It's really hard for people to find their way after leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, first of all, the religion told you who to be. You didn't get to decide who to be, it told you who you were. It told you what was important. It told you what you should be doing with your time. It told you what wasn't important. And a lot of the instruction that you got was very different than the rest of the world. It told you education wasn't important. How crazy is that? Education's not important. The end's coming. Not important. Being successful in your career is not important. A career itself is not important. You can just go and wash windows and clean people's houses, and that's just fine. Just keep your neck above water. Planning for your retirement, not important. How many people are messed up now because they did not plan to be old in this system of things? It told you who to be. And at a very young age, you get disconnected from yourself. For those of you who have children, watch a child at 5, 6, 7 years old. They are gravitating to who they are. If people pay attention to their children and let them be who they are instead of interrupting their own process, that child will thrive. You'll find that some children want to play with blocks for hours. Some can't wait to go outside. They love playing with balls and they love, whacking things with a stick, or they love sports. Some love drawing and painting. Some love to dance, some love to sing. Kids will show you who they are. And then at some point, we hijack them. Parents can tend to hijack their kids and go, no, that's not important, especially with the Jehovah Witnesses. You see, a lot of parents do this, but Jehovah Witnesses do it to an extreme. They tell you this isn't important. When I was a kid, I couldn't wait to Saturdays because the cartoons were on and I wanted to play with my friends outside. And nope, we got to go out in service. Listen, no 6-year-old kid wants to go knock on strangers' doors. That's not what you want to do. You want to play. You've been at school all week. You want to play. You want to go out there and just what kids do. Go play in a creek or ride your bikes around. I mean, you know, I'm a child of the 70s and 80s. We had our bikes. We couldn't wait till Saturday morning, but I know I had to go in service, watch all the other kids play while I'm knocking on doors, speaking to adults about something I don't understand. It told you who to be. Some of you in school, maybe you were very athletic. Couldn't do that. Some of you maybe wanted to run for class president or, some kind of an office in school. Couldn't do that. Some of you wanted to, join the theater. Maybe you wanted to be an actor. Couldn't do that. Whatever your passion was, you couldn't really pursue. And you had to push that down. And the more you push that down, the more disconnected you get from yourself. And you get stuck on conformity. Witnesses are all about conformity. Everybody's kind of the same. You could go to any kingdom hall and it kind of felt the same. People acted kind of the same. You could go to any kingdom hall around the world and it was kind of the same because the people are conformists. They're removed from who they are. And you just got used to making that your identity. Who you uniquely are wasn't important, fitting in was. You know, it's funny because someone tried to join our Facebook group not long ago. This is no, this is last week. Somebody tried to join our Facebook group, and I review everybody before I let them in the Facebook group. And this one girl was fronting. She wasn't a witness. I knew right off the bat. I just could tell. I looked at her Facebook profile. This is not an ex Jehovah Witness. I could tell. I could tell it was somebody trying to sell something. Because there's such a conformity. You know each other. How many times have you been in a restaurant or riding the bus or wherever, and you just knew those are witnesses over there? Just by the way they act, you could tell because it's all about conformity and fitting in. So what happens is you ignored your natural desires. You were betraying yourself. There's no greater betrayal than the betrayal of oneself. There's no greater betrayal than the betrayal of you. And when you leave the religion, you find that you betrayed yourself a long time ago, and you don't even know how to get back there. You betrayed yourself usually as a child because you weren't allowed to go in the direction where your natural gifts and talents were taking you. You may have had things that you wanted to discuss with your parents, or maybe you had doubts, or there's something that you wanted to talk about where the religion wasn't making sense to you, but you just pushed that down too because that wasn't allowed. So you get so disconnected from yourself that when you leave the religion, you have no idea who you are. When you ask a Jehovah Witness, tell me a little bit about yourself, one of the first two or three things they will say is, I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Hi, my name is so and so, and I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses. One of the first three things they'll say, it is their identity. Sometimes, as people who have left the religion, we also can get caught in the ex Jehovah Witness label, right? Because the religion is still defining us. If we're defined by the label of ex witnesses, it's still defining us because we don't know who we are without the religion. So this is a priority, is to really figure out who you are. Never denying that that was a part of your life, but it doesn't have to define you today. Some of you are having a hard time finding your groove in the world because you're trying to figure out how to fit in, because that's been what you've done your whole life, is fit in. How do I fit in? How do I make myself a part of this world? You're trying to figure that out. We're going to answer that question a little bit later, but that's where a lot of people are stuck, is they feel like a duck out of water and they're trying to, you know, migrate with the rest of the world. Ignoring your gifts and talents is a horrible thing. Everyone is given gifts and talents. If you think you don't have one, you're just disconnected from it. Everyone has things that they do easier than most people. Everyone. Some people can just look at something and draw it. It's a talent. Some people have a magical tongue. They can cook and not even use a recipe, or they know their tongue needs a little bit of paprika, whatever it is. They just know their tongue is magical. How do you know that? I watch people like, how do you know what it needs? That's a magical tongue. So people can grow a garden, and no matter what they tell you, your vegetables and fruits don't look like theirs. I mean, some people, it looks like a picture. Like, how do you get that tomato to look like that? Why are your plants so vibrant and healthy? They just understand the language of that. Some people pick up music very easily. They just hear stuff, or they can teach themselves how to play an instrument. Some people pick up language very easy. They can speak three, four languages. They just pick it up easily. Everyone's brain works a different kind of way, and there's different kinds of intelligence. It's not just one kind of intelligence, not just a schoolroom, classroom intelligence. Everyone has gifts and talents that come easy to them. You know, I'm a motivational speaker. Giving talks was always easy for me when I was, 7 years old. I'd make up my talks on the stage sometimes. I wouldn't even prepare. I just make it up, because it was always very easy to me. So I use that gift and talent today myself. That's a talent of mine. But we all have different gifts and talents. But so many times you just didn't engage it, so it doesn't feel like you have anything. Trust me when I say you do. You have your own gifts and talents. Sometimes we have a hard time finding our identity because we grew up with such guilt and shame and judgment. We're so harsh on ourselves that we are not looking at ourselves in the best light. We should all love ourselves. We should all be kind to ourselves. We should all know that the mistakes we make are just something to teach us, something to help us to learn. But there's so much guilt and shame when we leave the religion. If we keep validating the opinions of the people still in it, we'll never feel good. We'll always feel like we're doing something wrong. We'll always feel like we've lost our way, even though we consciously don't. Subconsciously, we might still be tying our identity into a form of religion. Ex witnesses struggle because they're taught to keep separate from the world. How do you fit in suddenly with something that you avoided all this time? How do you suddenly merge yourself with the rest of the world when you kind of treated them like they were dirty? They were worldly people. It's like a racial slur, isn't it? Worldly. Ugh. How do you suddenly fit in with these people that you were just pushing away all this time? It's not easy, right? Because subconsciously you were told that something was lesser about these people. Witnesses think they're humble, but they can be quite arrogant in the way they look at themselves. I have the truth. None of you do. I'm special. We're God's people. That's like we're up here, all y'all down here. And then you get in the real world, and that real world's moving 100 miles an hour. You feel like you're standing still. How do I get in the mix? How do I find my way? Ex-witnesses struggle because they don't trust themselves. They don't trust their intuition because you always went to somebody to get their opinion. What do the elders think about this? Let me go ask brother so and so. Is this going to stumble somebody? On and on. You don't trust your own intuition. You got to learn to trust your own intuition. If your life is spent asking other people what they think about stuff, you won't get very far in life at all because everybody thinks something else. The quickest way to confuse yourself is to validate everybody else's opinion. You've got to learn to trust your own intuition. You've got to learn to trust what's coming from within you. There's a poem I use a lot. I write poetry, and one of the poems I recite a lot has a line in it, and it says, "Never let anyone tell you what you should do, for they can't comprehend nor can they understand a dream that was meant for you." Why am I going to ask somebody about something that's not for them? Why am I going to get the opinion of somebody that it's not given the calling I'm given? People will merely give you an answer from their point of view, from their perspective. They usually will tell you how your question shows up in their life. They're not looking at the world through your lenses. You got to be very careful who you validate in life. And you got to start to trust your own intuition. With the witnesses, that gets very, very dulled, your intuition. Why? Because they keep telling you your heart is treacherous. They keep telling you, don't trust yourself. In other words, the heart is treacherous. Don't listen to us. They counsel you about independent thinking. What is independent thinking? Independent thinking is using your own mind. That's all it is. Be careful of independent thinking. Don't use your mind. Shut it off and just listen to us. Horrible, horrible, horrible advice. Shut off your mind. Listen to what we say. Be sheep like. Sheep are one of the dumbest animals on earth. Sheep aren't very smart. A sheep can be led off of a cliff. If the shepherd leads the sheep off the cliff, all the sheep will just walk off the cliff because they're not thinking. Be sheep like. How many times did you hear be sheep like? Just follow, don't think. And when you're told be sheep like, be like sheep, 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 that just shuts your mind off. That just makes you, where next? Where are we going next? What are we doing next? What are we thinking? What's the new light? What's the new understanding? And you just go, okay. Isn't it crazy that they can just change some doctrine or change a belief and millions of people go, okay, with no question, without losing any confidence. Okay, that's the new light. They've convinced their members that God either changes his mind a lot or he's an awful bad communicator to his people. like the Almighty God don't know how to communicate to his people. Oh, let the Almighty God, let's just watch all these people do the wrong thing for 25, 30 years. And then, okay, all right. No organ transplants. Let's watch a bunch of people die. And then, new light, you can do it now. Almighty God just watching. We'll just let you do it wrong. And when I feel like it, I will instruct them differently. New light. Who uses that? What is that? There's no such thing as new light. It's either light or it's not. New light, old light. Crazy terms used to indoctrinate. Tap into your own intuition. Understand how your intuition works. Don't just follow. Sometimes ex-witnesses struggle because they need approval. Again, fitting in. I need approval from others. I need to be okay by you. How many times were you told, oh, I better not do that. I might stumble somebody else. Well, that's your problem. Really? Your life should not be affected by what I do. You need to be doing what you need to be doing and not be looking at me. I'm stumbled by what you do with your life. Ridiculous. These are not children. These are grown men and women. You stumbled by what other people do. You got some work to do. So we got to get rid of that where we're just always affected by what other people think of us. If you're going to do anything great in this world, if you're going to have any impact in this world, some people are not going to like you, period. If you put yourself out there, you're going to get some negativity. You will never accomplish anything of any level without having some pushback. You got to get some thick skin and stop looking for approval from everyone. The more you stand up for yourself, the more you grow roots and stand firm for who you are, the more you're going to have people push back. So get okay with it. And just having a basic loss of identity, it creates a void. For a lot of people, what happens is they leave their religion and it creates a tremendous void in them, right? It's like this big thing that defines you gets taken out. And now you have a huge void. For some people, they take the religion and they put it back, and now they just fight the religion. But it's still occupying the same space in you. So it's still defining you. And that's what we got to be careful of is still being defined by the religion because now we're fighting the religion. No, you need to go find who you are. beyond the religion. Spread your wings and fly. Who are you beyond the religion? So when you don't know who you are because of the religion while you were in it, it leads to two things. For some people, it led to them living a double life. There were a lot of witnesses that just kind of did what they wanted to do and, pretended to be a witness. I did a little bit of that at some point, for sure. And then there are those who are lived a sheltered life. So they're so sheltered that in some ways they're really underdeveloped to move with the rest of the world. They just didn't learn things. So they're behind. They're behind career wise. They're behind relationship wise. They don't really know how to navigate relationships because they haven't been in very many of them. You know, people got married at 18, 19, 20 years old and maybe had one relationship. So they're just really clueless about the opposite sex. And it could be a whole lot of things that you can be really behind on because of a sheltered life. And the funny thing is, it's actually the double life people that move along quicker. They may have got judged more when they were in the religion, but they move along quicker because they had one foot out in the world as it is. So it's not shocking for them to just bring the rest of themselves over. The double life people actually move on quicker. The people who are absolutely sheltered, 100% bought in, 100% immersed, they have a difficult time coming out because they've been so sheltered and they're really behind the eight ball. So, really make it a priority to get to know you and to honor yourself. Honor you. I'm going to say this again. The biggest betrayal is the betrayal of self. So let's go through some solutions real quick, just going back to some of the points we went through when we started this. No longer allow people to tell you who to be. Allow yourself to honor yourself. You be who you are. No apologies. Understanding that no longer do you have to have the truth, you're just a growing, evolving person. Now that you're not a witness, you can always change your mind. You can say, "Oh, I was here last year. I think something totally different this year." You can keep evolving. You don't have to keep thinking the same thing. You're just growing as a person. So it's not like you've got to, oh, if this isn't the truth, what is? Witnesses always say that, don't they? If this isn't the truth, what is? There is no truth. It's just growth. You're always going to change your mind. Mankind itself is evolving. Things keep changing and evolving because when you grab onto something and you say it's the truth, that's the quickest way to ignorance. When you think you have the truth, you no longer ask questions and you no longer grow. The quickest way to be very ignorant is to hold on to something. Be free to change your mind, to grow, to expand. You're not stuck on one thing. When you move into the real world, it's no longer about conformity. It's not really about fitting in. People of the real world aren't all trying to fit in, they're just being uniquely themselves. People will be fascinated with you. Be okay with you. Don't feel like you got to be a particular way. Just be you. Your job while you're on earth is to be the best version of you. You are a one of a kind, one of one, special edition human being. There's no other you. Your job is to be the best you. You're not competing with anybody else. You're not trying to fit in. You're just being you. And that's what the real world is about, is you being you. Stop ignoring your gifts and talents. Even if you're not at a point where you can become a professional at something, maybe that time has passed with some things, but even if you do it as a hobby, do what you love. Life is to be enjoyed. When you engage your gifts and talents, you will enjoy life more. Some people picked up on their gifts and talents early. Maybe it's somebody who's a chef, always loved cooking. Well, cooking at home and you just discovering different recipes and fooling around with it, you enjoy it if you love it. One thing I'm going to start doing again is sketching. I had a talent of, I used to win art contests a lot when I was in school. I want to start drawing again because that's where I find my flow state when I start drawing and I just kind of lose myself in it. I enjoy it. I probably missed the chance to be a professional at it. I haven't put enough time in it to actually, sell my pieces, but I really need to do that again because I just enjoy doing that. It's fun. It grounds me. I kind of find my flow. Do what you enjoy. Get rid of shame and guilt. It's only going to hold you up. Your mistakes are only there to teach you. Integrate with the world. Find things you love and do them with people. Join networking groups. Maybe you could go on meetup.com and find groups that do some of the things that you love. Engage in what you love. And then you'll not have that pressure. If you're trying to find a new community and people to hang out with, just get involved with things. Do things that you love doing with other people. If you like hiking, find a group that goes hiking and get in there. Just do what you love and get with people who also love that thing. Learn to start listening to your intuition. Hear that voice inside. Hear that voice. Stop denying that voice. Hear the callings that are in you. You'll find that there are things that you have a calling for. You might want to help people. Maybe you have a calling for medicine. Maybe you have a calling for counseling people. Maybe you have a calling to whatever it is. Listen to that calling that's within yourself. Stop needing approval from others. Let that go. And don't identify yourself by labels. Don't identify yourself as just an ex Jehovah Witness. Be bigger than that. Understand that you can be whatever you can allow your mind to imagine, whatever you can get your mind to conceive, you can create in your reality. That's the truth of the matter. You are the creator of your reality by the thoughts that you carry, by your belief system. What you can convince your mind to believe, what you can hold in your mind, you can hold in your hand. So let go of all those limitations that you were given by the Jehovah's Witnesses. So let's bring our panel up. Right. So, some feedback of today's subject matter. We got Cindy, Aubrey, and Dean. Um, who wants to start off? Let's, Cindy?
I think this is a great topic. I know I struggled with this when I left because I knew that I wanted to leave the organization, but I didn't know how to think differently about myself or about the outside world. So even though I knew I didn't want to be in, I didn't know how to move in another direction. And so in order to feel like I was functioning or part of the new world that I was living in, I kind of became a follower. So what everybody else was doing that I was around, maybe coworkers or people at the gym or whatever, I started mimicking them. I would go out and maybe I spent a lot more time hanging out at clubs drinking than the person that I really am wanted to do or should do. But I started doing that. Um, I started dressing certain ways that maybe now I wouldn't dress that way. But I didn't know and I didn't trust myself to find out. Because as a young woman in the organization, I was always taught not to think for myself because I didn't know well enough to tell myself. I had to ask my father, or had I married, I would have had to ask my husband, or I would have been looking to a ministerial servant or elder to guide me because I didn't know how to think for myself to determine what was good for me. And some of the practices that I use now that help me know who I am or help me find my way, which by the way can be fluid, it doesn't have to be static. You can change what you believe because what's true for you today may not be true for you tomorrow. But some of the practices that I use to help me, like meditation, going inward, and breath work, walking in nature, some of those things we were taught weren't good for us. they were demonic or from the devil, or were just evil. And that's not true. So I started slowly making choices for myself. And when I found out that I was still alive the next day, when I made a choice of my own and something drastic didn't happen to me, and things started working in my favor, when I followed the inner voice that I started to hear, then I became more empowered to make more decisions for myself. But one piece of advice to be cautious about is you can overdo that sometimes. And when you find that inner voice, you want to think that what you're hearing for yourself applies to everyone else. And you start giving people a lot of unsolicited advice because you think you're the master of truth. Because we always believed that we had the truth. So now we're like, okay, well, we know that wasn't the truth. So now this is, and now everybody needs to know what I'm thinking because I'm right about this. So just a word of caution that, learn what's true for you, follow what's true for you, even if it changes over time, but that may not always be true for others. So we need to respect other people's rights to choose what is good for them and allow them to follow their own path.
Yeah, you made some interesting points. Sometimes you leave the witnesses and you're like, how do I be worldly? you know, you know, like there's some way to be worldly because again, when you're a witness, it's like us and them. Like they put the whole world as if they all act and do the same things, and it's not true. And that's what you were doing, right? You were just not being yourself, trying to figure out how to be worldly. How do worldly people dress? Or how do worldly people? Do we go to clubs every weekend? Like whatever it is, you go to the opposite extreme, but that's still not you. It's still
Right.
not you. You're trying to create something
It's
and
like
be.
a little coil or a little spring that's been held too tight, and then you let it go and it just flies
Uh,
all over the place and jumps around. You have to be careful not to do that as well.
yeah, and you could be who you are. I mean, you don't have to be extreme. Some people's real identity is not that far from who they were as a witness, and that's their real identity, right? You don't have to change it. I mean, you can just slowly evolve. You don't have to be that spring that just bounces wherever you are. It's okay, and be okay, and also be okay with changing your mind as time goes on. And I think women have even a harder time with all of this because at least men could go up the ladder in the religion, or men were taught that they were the head of the house, which means they could make decisions and whatnot. But women, you're under the thumb of the organization, you're under the thumb of your husband, and you really don't have an identity. You're just taught that you are the husband's helper. Right? So, who are you in particular? And it's a double whammy for women. So, thank you for your share. Next, I'll just call on you, Aubrey. What you got?
Yeah, so um, it's very true, at least in my case, that like my witness version of myself is actually similar to my authentic version of myself. There's similarities there. And the fact that now I'm living more in alignment with who I am, I can now thrive and sharpen those skills. And like you mentioned, like as a woman in the organization, well, Cindy knows you're very limited to what you are able to do in the organization. There's that headship thick arrangement. You're at the bottom of at the totem pole, um, and the organization just instills so much fear in you.
Mhm.
so so everything. I woke up during the pandemic, so everything was just I was just dominated by fear and the trauma, and everything just felt so risky. Even trying to understand who I am. Um, but like you mentioned, I think those natural desires and your authenticity, even though that's covered by conformity, it's still there. It's just down there. um, now I remember like one of the processes for me during the pandemic, how I was able, like when I woke up and tried to learn how to deprogram and finding my identity, those natural desires that I had, presenting, just love for people, um, the creativity part, they were still there. I just couldn't amplify it in the organization.
Hmm.
But when I left, when I escaped the organization, now I had this opportunity, even though it was risky. I started to integrate that little by little in my 9 to 5 job, just little by little.
Even though it was risky, I
And
started to integrate.
oh, sorry, I heard it an echo. But yeah, and the thing is, a lot of my bosses and leadership started to notice that, because now I was able to kind of like not hold back, and they were the ones that, not saying validating, but they were like, "Hey, Aubrey, you seem natural at this, yada yada yada," which to me, I could never take credit for it. I could never like really like, that's just, that's, it just felt a little crunchy for me. But then I started to just like be open to their comment and feedback, and I started to look into life coaching and all the things that they were telling me, because now I had this newfound freedom. And then I was able to use critical thinking, and then question whether these things actually felt in alignment with me, and if it did, just started to notice if it felt right, and just be open to it. And and sometimes it doesn't feel, it's like sometimes new information, because it's unfamiliar, doesn't feel, it doesn't land nice sometimes, because it's new and it's unfamiliar. I just think that when we can reframe it as an opportunity for you to show self-compassion, and an opportunity for you to really know who you are. I think those are just opportunities for you to know who you are, and to kind of understand your true identity. So sometimes that for me kind of started with people in my 9 to 5 that said, "Hey," so sometimes we don't know, but people who are, you know, professionals who kind of know our work ethic and things like that, and who have been observing you, just be open to that, and then just use your newfound freedom to start critically thinking, asking questions. And and if it doesn't feel right, it's okay, because it's unfamiliar. That just allows you an opportunity to show self-compassion, an opportunity for you to know who you are a little bit more, whether you like it or don't like it, whether if it's for you or not for you.
What I like about what you said is you said that who you are is not that different from who you were in the organization. I think
Hmm.
it's important to, with wherever life takes you, whatever path life takes you, and this is for everybody. You don't have to fight everything. Sometimes you learn things that are useful, right? You don't have to become the opposite. There are good things that you learned in the organization. It gave you a certain kind of structure. I mean, if you look at how you were as a witness, or why you may have been so zealous as a witness, just take some of those principles and apply it somewhere else, right? They work for you. You know, Part of success is repetition. It's doing the same thing over and over and over again. But with the witnesses, they took all your time and put it all there. Put it somewhere else, right? Maybe your language is not as foul as the next person. Go keep that. You don't have to become the opposite. I'm not judging if you did, but you don't have to. I love the fact that I don't have to watch the way I speak when I'm in front of people. I don't slip up and cuss, because as a witness, I didn't cuss. I'm not saying I never do, but it's not something that I have to watch. Oops, because I do it so much. No, that's something that I do take from that past and that history, or even the way dealing with the opposite sex is not hard for me. As witnesses, you have um, that's a big deal, right? I mean, we're not disrespectful toward the opposite sex, so that's something I take with me still. My brain isn't always having an agenda like a lot of people, so that's a good thing. So there are good things that you can take from it. There's other things that you definitely want to let go. Not questioning. Oh, I like to question everything. I like to question myself, right? That's something I had to add in there. So it's a mix. You don't have to be anti everything witness. Thank you for that share, Dean. What do you got?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think part of that whole identity and wrapping yourself up into being a witness and everything revolving around that. I think one of the things that I've had to work really hard at is trying to figure out what I wanted in life, because your life was mapped out for you. It was like you were living 100 years ago, where you were a factory worker, and you went to work in the factory because your father worked in the factory. And then you're going to work there until you were 60, and then you retired, and then 5 years later you died. And it was like, that was your life, because you never thought about anything, and you never went on holiday, never did this. And I come to understand, when I look at it, I became kind of this drone where I wasn't even looking at the next year. You were just kind of looking at, well, what's happening, in this next month, am I going to make my hours? And it was like this whole thing where you did your hours, you did your ministry, you did what you needed to do, and whatever responsibilities, if you had any. And then sometime in the future, there was this, magical man in the sky who was going to come and give you everything that you wanted, because you didn't know what you wanted. But this perfect life would just be ushered on you, not knowing what that perfect life was. It was just this perfect life would arrive somehow, like kind of in the mail. You'd open up and go, oh, look, exactly what I'm looking for. And I think to me, the biggest mind shift has been to say, okay, I've got this one journey of life. What does it look like when it ends? And I think I remember reading Covey's book, 7 Habits, where he had that thing about you have to write the eulogy from 3 people in your life of what you want your life to look like. And that does change slightly over time. And you'll have disappointments in your life where things don't happen exactly like you wanted them to happen. You wanted something to happen and then it didn't happen. Case in point, from our side, we never had kids. It changes a lot of the dynamic of what your life looks like, because there isn't another generation. So your sense of who you are and what you're passing on has to be redefined. And these are the questions that you struggle with. And then we have got to the point now is that life is the struggle to figure out what you're trying to do and what creates meaning. And I think that's the beauty of life, is that it's such an intensely personal thing, and you need to go into that silence and meditate and think. And all of those last few things that I mentioned was something that you never learned, because life was always busy with stuff and busy with new light, like you said, and busy with preparation and all this stuff. There was all this material that was coming at you. And I think the biggest thing now is to how to step back and say, what do I do to take control of my life and make my life make meaning?
I like that you said life is deeply personal. It is. I mean, who am I to tell somebody else exactly how they should live their life, or who's anybody to tell anybody that? I've shared this before. And my life is probably like a lot of you, probably almost all of you. But my life was Monday we had Watchtower prep, Tuesday we had book study, Wednesday I had to go out in service after school a lot of the times. Thursday was service meeting. Friday was finally a free day. Saturday was field service, and Sunday was meeting again. That is absolutely not allowing any space for you to find yourself, any space for you to do the things that you're passionate about. Maybe you can play with it just a little bit, but you never get to engage in anything enough to be good or great at anything else but that. So now you have the time to spend time with yourself, because you're not as busy. Part of controlling people is keeping them busy. But now you have the time to go, okay, what makes you uniquely me? Who am I? What makes me different than the person next to me? Not the same, different. What makes you remember me? What do I have that adds value to people? Me personally. What's the recipe that makes me me? What if it's like all food tasting the same? That's what being a food. No, food's supposed to all be different. and it's not supposed to be the same. There's not a right or wrong. I can't eat spicy food. It just turns my stomach upside down. Doesn't mean spicy food is wrong. It's just wrong for me. Right? Other people love spicy food. That's what makes things so wonderful. Is the colors of the rainbow and everything, including who you are. Cindy, you had you want to go again, Dean?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one of the other things, if you did have a special talent, it was almost like you were encouraged to hide it. Because why do you think you're so special? I mean, and that was actually told me, it's like, why do you think you have greater thinking ability than anybody else? And I'm going like,
yeah,
because I do. It's like, but you were told to like zip it and just conform. Just,
regulate your talent to them, right?
Yes, exactly.
We all had that. We all had that brother or sister that could sing, and they sang at every doggone wedding, every gathering. That's the only place they get to sing, in some wedding or gathering. That's funny. Cindy, you had another share?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on something that Aubrey said, because I totally could relate to that. Is, at least in my case, I couldn't always see my strengths or weaknesses. I was kind of blind to who I was at some point. And it was my boss and some of my coworkers who also were giving me advice or telling me things that they saw that I was good at, or they were offering advice in areas that I could improve on. And sometimes, because I had always been told what to think and what to do, I wasn't always open to the areas of improvement. Not because I didn't think that they were giving me good advice, but it was hard to hear something about yourself that you could improve without feeling hyper criticized. Or I don't want anyone telling me what I'm going to do or how I should be anymore at all. So whenever it was, this is challenging for you, and let me give you some advice on how you can improve in that area. And oh, by the way, by improving in that area, you will strengthen this other part that you're already really good at. And I had to find a way to let go of feeling like someone was criticizing me instead of trying to guide me and trying to help me. And so there's two sides to that coin, but don't push away what other people see about you, even when it's something that is one of your strengths, because you can be blind to what is you until you really start to see who you are yourself. You may have a talent you didn't even realize was a talent until someone points it out to you. And then when you're open to that, and let's say they think you're really good at it and you want to explore it, and you're like, yeah, I might be okay with this, but I don't really like it. I don't want to do that. Well, that's okay too. But don't be afraid to look at things that people are advising you about.
What you're speaking of is constructive criticism versus judgment. What the witness is, it's all judgment, right? It's not constructive criticism. It's just judgment, right? Even if you were to get in trouble and you had to go speak to the elders about something, they never used your mistake to teach you. It was just judgment. So sometimes we leave the religion, you just don't want to listen to anybody. Right? You don't know what constructive criticism is, and you also sometimes don't know how to take a compliment, because in that organization you were only complimented for your service to the organization, not for you as an individual. Like, this is what makes you awesome. Nothing to do with the organization. This is just awesome about you. And sometimes we don't know how to take those compliments. So great share. Let's talk about gifts and talents and the callings, and how have some of you been able to engage in gifts that you discovered later and been able to, pour some gasoline on those gifts and talents. Who wants to speak on that? How have you been able to engage in things you either are talented at or you feel a calling to do? Cindy, you're muted.
Yeah, I know I was talking to somebody else, but but I'll go ahead. When I didn't realize that I could write anything well enough that anyone else would enjoy reading. But when Jack asked me if I wanted to participate in telling my story in the Fear to Freedom book, I was like, yeah, I really want to do that. And sitting down and writing that chapter for that book really felt good for a lot of reasons. I mean, just putting your life story in writing is so healing for yourself, even if nobody else likes reading it. But because of that, I started kind of just writing some other things. And so now I write a newsletter, every other an article in a newsletter for the community that I live in. And I write about health and wellness stuff because I really enjoy health and wellness stuff. And so now I write it and people tell me, oh, I saw your article in the newsletter, and they really like it. So that was a hidden thing that I would have probably never tried before. And then just participating in this group and joining the Empowered Minds group and taking the experiences of growing up as a Jehovah's Witness and over the last 30 years leaving and trying to find my way and being able to just share my experience with others is something that I find is an enjoyable gift. Giving advice to someone, trying to help them through some of the struggles and hopefully saving them from some of the pain that I went through. Every time I speak with people or get to know people and we share our stories, it really helps me just as much as they say I help them. So just opening yourself up to things and opening yourself up to other people, it's very rewarding, and that is something that I've allowed myself to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Being able to use your history, right? History's not wasted if you can find a way to use it, right? That's what's beautiful about being able to affect other people's lives. The history in your whole past becomes a treasure chest. You can pull from it and help other people. So that's awesome.
And realizing that some of the lessons that I've learned in my journey away from being a Jehovah's Witness to finding my authentic self and living in alignment with who I am, it doesn't just help ex-Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right.
And people have the same needs and they have the same struggles when something that was a belief system that you held for a long period of time starts to break down. It doesn't have to be an ex-Jehovah's Witness mindset or belief. Anytime someone lets go of a belief system that they held dearly, or they lose someone from their life, they all go through the same struggles. And
Yeah.
so learning how to take those experiences from our lives and share those with people outside of the Jehovah's Witness organization and seeing yourself be heard and help those people is very rewarding.
Love it. Awesome. Aubrey, how have you been able to incorporate your gifts and talents?
How have I been able to incorporate my gifts and talents? I think kind of like similar to what I mentioned. I think once I kind of just being open to it or just identifying what those are, being a creative entrepreneur, public speaking, and just having this desire for life stories. I think it just feels great. It feels in alignment and it's still in service to other people. I think that's what I think you mentioned this in your talk. It's like that's kind of like what we're here is to share our gifts, right, with other people. At least that's what makes life so meaningful. And so it was, so I think just, I think of the word curiosity. Like, we have always had these natural desires, but we couldn't play into it, or they were just called temptations. But now we have the ability to explore our curiosity and to really explore and untap these natural desires that we have, because um, it's just our birthright to do that, right? To follow our heart and our intuition. That's our birthright. But we were always told to go against it. And so that to me, found the curiosity, tapping into your natural gifts. And I don't know, this conversation is leading me to, sometimes we can find who we are through inspiration. Like, sometimes the biggest things that I've done have come through inspiration. It's not always planning, it's just inspiration. And then we just have a choice whether we want to participate in that inspiration or not. And that's where our free will, following our intuition and our heart, plays a role, whether we want to participate in that. Because I feel like inspiration is given to us because we are capable to do it, to fulfill it. It's just our choice whether we want to fulfill it or not, or participate in it.
Yeah. Awesome. You're such a light. So now your light can just shine bright and turn that dimmer up and
Yes.
shine. Love
Yes. Yes.
it. Dean, how about you?
I think one of the places, and this has probably only happened in the last couple of years, and that is that whole concept that leadership is taken, it isn't given to you. And I think one of the problems that I had to struggle with that was that sense of conceitedness that came out of being a JW, with always being right. That when you raised your voice, when you had something to say, when you spoke your truth, you spoke it in a completely incorrect way, which wasn't well accepted. And I think one of the things that I've had to learn is that you've learned people skills, but you've also learned when you see something wrong to say something about it, and to say, I don't agree with what's happening here because it doesn't seem wrong, or it doesn't seem right. And it literally happened to me about 4 or 5 months ago, where I was sitting with two of the senior guys in the team that I'm in. And when I mentioned it to my direct report, he just sat there, and I watched his face as I said, listen, I'm just not feeling comfortable about how this is going on and everything else. And I just spoke my truth very calmly. And there was a silence literally for like 20 seconds as he took it in, and he looked at me and he said, geez, I didn't realize that, hey? He says, I can't believe we're doing that. And there was the stunned silence. And I think that was the impact on the moment, where it becomes a moment where if your heart is telling you, say something in kindness because you want to help somebody, that's where leadership starts. And I think one of the places that I struggle with there is in my own life as well, where I try to lead myself too harshly, because you're kind of going, this is just not going anywhere, and then you want to put this massive pile of energy in it, but that's not the way things happen. Things happen by just consistent working through and being truthful to yourself, but also that whole thing about just taking leadership, and everybody's going through this life trying to figure out what the path is. And if you've got some insights, because hopefully, by the time you reach 60, hopefully you haven't just got older, hopefully you've also got wiser, as John Maxwell used to say. and I kind of think a lot of that time is, I think it's using your critical facilities to say, how to understand how I got to this point. And then the next thing to learn is how do I communicate this to somebody else that can benefit them? And it isn't about trying to tell people what to do. It's leading people to a place that you've been through, down a path that you've been through where you may have stumbled, because it's getting through and passing that on to other people.
Yeah. I love the part where you say, you talk about having a voice. And again, coming from that background, especially for women, your voice didn't matter. And for men, if you weren't of a certain position, your voice didn't matter. But we all have a voice. If we see something that's not right, we can speak up. We can, again, that's a part of being truly who you are. It's a part of being courageous. It's about standing in the truth of you. Truth is about you, not about something out there. So to be in your truth is essential for us to create the lives that we seek to create. So thank you, panel, for joining us and sacrificing a part of your Sunday fun day. Go out there and have some fun for sure. And for those of you watching us live, thank you for watching us live. Those on YouTube, thank you for subscribing and watching us every week. So go out there and have some fun today. Life is to be enjoyed and experienced. See you next week.